week. So thank you for having me back. And I hope today that I can just share some insight with the folks on the call here to learn a little bit more about what's happening at work and even the things that were taking place far before this pandemic of Corona came into the picture. So just by background, for those of you that don't know me, I am now the founder and CEO of a company called R3 Engage. I am the former Chief People and Culture Officer at Ceridian. I actually transitioned out of my role last week so that I could go out and help other organizations experience the radical transformation capabilities that there are in the world of work. So excited to be here today. A lot of the content that you're going to see today, I actually worked in conjunction with Ceridian to put together in terms of the research and the learning. So I want to definitely give them proper credit for their help with that. You know, as we look at the future, and a lot of this has not changed. Granted, you know, there's a lot of chaos going on in the world right now. We just got our latest unemployment numbers back last week, and if you hear the number 10 million people that have filed for unemployment, that just seems absolutely crazy. And when we think about that from an HR perspective, it literally pains me in my gut. You think about the fact that means that realistically, there should have been, in a perfect world, 10 million individual conversations with those people who were unfortunately being exited out of their organization. And the reality is, if you've been on Twitter, LinkedIn, anything, you know that some organizations are not behaving gracefully. My hope with the next 15, 20 minutes is to talk about how work is transforming and for us to think about the things that we can learn from this, but even the things that we can take from before all of this happened and ensure that we continue to be an exceptional place to work. So we set out last year to do a global stressor report just to really understand like what is stressing CHROs, CEOs when it comes to transforming the world of work. And there were really 5 things that came out. These are still very relevant in today's world. Now, you know, we might have a little bit different of a mindset when it comes to, you know, the global competition for talent, given that there's now 10 million people in the US out of work. But when we think about things like disruptive technologies and the gig economy and how to go through what the future looks like, a lot of this is really going to be important for us as HR leaders and for just leaders in general across our organizations. When we think about the first stress or the adoption of disruptive tech, you know, there's a lot of opportunity now for us to get even more focused on how to utilize technology to drive business advances. And if you think about AI, you know, robotic process automation, machine learning, all of those different things are going to become far more relevant now as we transition into the now of work and what our future of work will be, that we really got to get aggressive. I know a lot of people are probably saying this is not the time to be thinking about technology, but it absolutely is. We got to deal with the human elements in our organization, but we also have to think about how we can accelerate the utilization of the technological platforms that you all have in your organization to be able to start getting a much more clear view of your people across the company. And if you look at just examples, I've seen wonderful tweets from organizations over the past couple of weeks where they've been able to use some of their internal technology platforms to understand the health and the wellness of their employees, to ensure that their employees that might be in heavily populated states where there's been a significant outbreak, that they're able to contact them and be in contact without having to use email and other things. So we're going to continue to see that pressure. And I think as we transition into the next phase of this now of work, accelerating the utilization and the business processes that surround this are going to be absolutely crucial, not just for CHROs, but for CEOs and COOs alike, to really make sure that connectivity continues to become even stronger as we move into kind of, again, this next journey. As we think about kind of that next area, we've been talking for, it feels like years, about the closure of the expertise gap. And, you know, right before all of this started to happen, there was a lot of focus on the gig economy, that we were going to need to be retraining people constantly for new jobs. I mean, there was an article by Deloitte that said that 375 million people globally will need to really be retrained for jobs by 2030. Well, let's pause for a moment and think about the pressures that are on us now with 10 million people going into the unemployment realms. what's going to happen in the way our businesses shift over the next, call it 30, 45, 90, 180 days, as we start to bring those people back into the workforce, we're going to have to be really, really focused on how to retrain some of them for the new roles that might be developing out of this. There might be new expectations that are coming in play. There could be entirely new roles that we never even thought were necessary in our organization. And so it's going to be incredibly important that as we're continuing this, we are finding ways to keep employees committed, to keep them loyal, and to keep that learning going so that we hopefully can kind of future-proof our organizations if possible, so that should something else, God forbid us, like this happen in the future, we've got the education and the knowledge and the expertise within the people that come to our organizations every day and provide services for us. The third stressor that we talked about really is multi-generational. You know, we find this all the time. This is going to be an even bigger thing now. We've heard all the things about people taking jobs for reasons other than compensation and benefits. People have, been staying kind of out of the workforce longer and getting more degrees. Well, now, again, they're going to be competing with the other 10 million people that are out of work, who probably many of them had been at their jobs for a significant number of years. And so it's going to be really important for us to really think about, what does the demands of the workforce look like coming back from this pandemic? And we're going to have to think about what our workplace experiences are, what types of programs we're building. And we're going to have to be even more thoughtful and methodical about ensuring that they're broad and that they are helping all of the people who are coming back into our workforces over the next 6 to 12 months. The fourth piece that we found, obviously, was the competition for talent, and it's not so much about not the war on talent that we used to hear about, but the inability for us as organizations to be able to find the right people for the right roles. And when there's this much talent that is going into the unemployment realm, there's going to be tremendous opportunity for organizations to really be thoughtful about who they're bringing in. We're not going to want to use traditional recruiting techniques to bring people in. And I will tell you, if you think that consumers and employees alike, given that most of our employees are consumers, aren't watching the behavior of organizations, you're really wrong. And I think this is a time where we have to think about, do we have a good brand strategy in place that on the other side of this, we're going to be able to come back and we're going to be able to increase our ability to influence people in the workforce to want to come to work for us? Because let's be honest, we see the bad stories all over Twitter, all over LinkedIn, all over the news, frankly, about how organizations have not navigated the past 3 to 4 weeks in a way that allows them to be presented as a great place to work. And those companies are going to suffer in the future in terms of their ability to gain new customers and gain new people who want to dedicate their time and efforts to being employed by them. So these stressors are kind of taking a life of their own as we're moving into this new world. And then last but not least, I mean, let's be honest, we already know that there are some states that have regulatory and compliance complexities that change on a regular basis. This is going to become far more significant in the months and years ahead of us as we think about new laws and regulations that are going to come in, some of the relief efforts that the government has put into place. There might be, longer term impacts to those where some of them become more common and actual like expectations for us in terms of compliance. And so it's gonna right now create a lot of uncertainty and some unclear next steps. But the reality is we really have to be thinking about these things as we start moving into the next journey in this experience, because we are being affected by these things and we are going to have to figure out ways to continue to move us forward. So, as I use this quote all the time, it seems so surreal right now that it's so relative, and that really is, in a disruptive world, transformation is paramount to survival. This had a whole different meaning for me, again, 6 weeks ago than it does right now, given that the disruption that's happening to us is something that is so just great and impacting so many lives. But the reality is transformation and survival in in a disruptive area have been around for years. I mean, let's use a couple of examples. For those of you that are my age on this call, you remember Blockbuster videos. There were actual video stores that we went to to buy or to rent movies from. Well, Blockbuster was so slow to adapt to the new concepts of, getting the discs in the mail like Netflix, to going to the streaming thing, that they went out of business. You had Nokia, who back in a day really thought that the only reason for, a cell phone was for communication via the phone. They were too slow to adapt to the disruption around moving to your phone actually becoming a tremendous source of data and connectivity all across the world. So if we look at that externally, there's all of these examples where the rate of elevation and change and transformation in consumer technology has far outpaced that of the workplace. And this is a time now, as we go into this next future of work segment, we really got to be thoughtful about how we are transforming that in the workplace. It's also the opportunity now for us to think more specifically about consumerizing the employee experience. If it was important before now, oh my goodness, it's far more important in the months ahead of us. We really have to think about, how are we engaging with human beings, not employees, human beings? Because let's be honest, the other thing that's going to come out of this is you're going to see more people that enter into the gig workforce than the traditional full-time, part-time, and types of employment arrangements. And it's going to require us to think differently about what that journey is, from how do we go out and actually find the people that we want to say hello to the people that we are going to bring into our organization. And again, we've got to really be, realistic with ourselves and understand that people are going to be even more thoughtful about who they go to work for. I know lots of people will say, no, Lisa, people are just going to want jobs. Yes, but they're also going to want to go work for organizations that they want to have support them. A lot of people are anxious, they're fearful, they've been burned, unfortunately, and so they're going to be more thoughtful about who they're going to work for as they're making that selection. And so for us, we really have to think about, what does the employee experience look like? And we've got to design now for what the future looks like. And in order to do that, there's a number of things that we have to be really focused on. And it's funny because when you look at these different elements of this, there's so many technologies out there right now that don't allow for this type of experience. And that's the first piece of this, is we've got to build technological platforms that connect us to other humans, that help give people the opportunity to be the best version of themselves at and away from work. We know we've got to have intuitive capabilities, whether that's in your payroll system, in your applicant tracking system, in your communication or collaboration technologies. People want them to be integrated, especially now more than ever, as we think about people coming back into the workforce. They want to make sure that they kind of have all of the information that they need right at their fingertips in a very simple mobile capability. They don't want 3 or 4 different apps for their health and wellness and for their collaboration and to check their payroll. This time has made people very anxious, and they want all that together. More than ever, we want information in real time. We want things to be instant. We know that people wanted that. I have 3 daughters who are 21, 14, and 12, and they obviously want instant stuff. If the Wi-Fi in my house right now isn't working fast enough, everybody's sending me text messages to say, reboot the internet, or get off Wi-Fi, mom, because I'm trying to do something. That's going to continue as these younger generations now that have come up even further growing in an online environment are going to expect that, and they're going to expect that level of personalization. They're going to want to feel so much more connection to the information that's being both asked for from them as well as delivered back to them. And then as HR leaders, let's be honest, as I think about the new world, we need to be far more perceptive and prescriptive in the way that we're transforming our work. Having data in a new world isn't enough. You've got to actually have data that tells people what it means and elicits action out of them. And so it's a great opportunity for us to think differently. That there's lots of new capabilities out there. My former employer Ceridian announced last week the launch of the Dayforce wallet that actually allows employees to be paid every day, basically in real time, for all the wages that they've earned. So again, you think about technology and what people are expecting. in this world that they're in right now, people don't want to wait for a payday for 2 weeks. They want a payday every day. And there's going to be advances like this in technology that are going to be similar to the Apple, the Apple wallet and everything else that we use in our personal life. So again, if you're an HR leader, this is a great time for you to really take inventory of what those technological platforms are and where you can gain efficiencies in this new world of work. Now, that all said, people are what make companies work. It's not the technology platforms that we have. And again, as we enter into the next couple of years ahead of us, that's going to become even more significant to organizations. And we've really got to focus on how do you build a people-centric or people-first approach to all of your HR and business processes. And it's really simple. We believe that if you get the relationship right with individuals, then those individuals deliver exceptional and world-class customer service to your customers. And in turn, we make our shareholders and the market happy when it starts to go back up, because we're delivering exceptional service and we're generating revenue for the organization. So again, as we think about the transition and the transformation now, these things are going to become more and more important. A lot of organizations are going to start scrambling and say, oh my gosh, we got to focus on our customer. Pause, breathe for a moment and realize, yes, you do, but you got to focus on your customer first and foremost by building the right relationships with your people. They need you more now than they ever have in the past. And it's going to be important that we lean in and we dive in even further there versus our natural reaction, which is we've got to pivot and put all of our information and our attention and focus out on our customer. We have to find a healthy balance in this world right now in order to continue to deliver the way we want. And so really, I boil it down to 4 things. It comes down to, first and foremost, your people. The second is making sure that you have truly built an exceptional culture that it's authentic and it's genuine. And in this time, I always say to CHROs and CEOs, like, the 2 times that individuals really understand what you really stand for as a company is when you're in a crisis mode like this, or 2, when they're leaving the organization. That's when you really see the true display of how people are. And again, going back to what we've seen over the past couple of weeks, there's many organizations out there that have said one thing and have behaved vastly different from that. And so it's going to be an opportunity in the future to do more cultural transformation. And that's going to come back to rebuilding programs. We're going to have to reimagine how we do things. We're going to have to reinvent them. And then we're going to have to put a lot of reinvestment back into our employees if we want to get the lift that we're hoping for and keep those people who have probably been working extra time, maybe working 16, 17 hours a day, not seeing their family a lot right now. We're going to need to make sure that we build the right infrastructure from a cultural and programmatic experience. And then obviously do as much as we can to give them a technology platform that allows them to have access to all that information, all the data that they need in a really simple, non-time consuming approach. So those are really the things that are going to be key for us as we move forward as organizations. It's also going to be important to pause and really think about how you measure success in the future. I was having a conversation with a CHRO last week, and she asked me, she said, Lisa, do you recommend that we continue to measure engagement during this time? We know that it's going to probably be low because, again, people are uncertain. They're seeing people lose their jobs. There's a sense of fear. We already know what the data is going to tell us. And my recommendation was not a definitive yes or no. You need to continue to talk to your people. Do you need to be measuring engagement through a survey now? No, but quite frankly, you shouldn't be using engagement surveys as your measurement. Engagement is a lagging indicator. And if that's what you're using to try and figure out what people desire or need, you're already behind the 8 ball. This is a time more than ever to sit down with your employees and have real-time intimate conversations, whether that's one-on-one, whether it's in town halls or global all hands meetings. Go to where the action is and talk to the people, talk to your lowest paid employees, talk to the people who are on the front lines dealing with your customers. It's not enough for us to sit in the executive suite or the senior leader types of levels and think we know what our people need and deserve, not even just now, but in general, in good times and in bad. And so it's helping us specifically, as CHROs, really rethink what we're using to measure success. I'll tell you right now, I've never been one that measures things like cost per hire, time to fill, overall turnover. Like those are metrics that don't tell a compelling story and really don't correlate to any type of business outcomes that are significant. And so this is also a time for us to transform what really matters and how we're going to measure that. First and foremost, I mentioned I'm not a big supporter of engagement. And again, my sole purpose for saying that is it's a lagging indicator. And I was on a call last week with Jason Averbrook, and he asked me the question. He said, do you think engagement was ever the right thing to measure? And my response was no, it never has been. But back in 10, 15 years ago, we didn't know what else to do. We know what else to do now. And it's up to us to do it for the people that work for us. So our focus is really on employee sentiment, how effective our leaders are. Like, let's be honest, if there has ever been a test of your leadership capability in your organization, it is now. People are watching how their leaders are responding. And if they're seeing leaders who are freaking out and not able to manage this, they're going to respond. If they see, leaders who are uncertain and vulnerable and concerned about things, that's natural. If anything, this is the time to be vulnerable. But you still need leaders to lead and to still provide whatever motivation and inspiration you can. The second thing that I've really been focused on is employee net promoter scores. All of you probably measure customer satisfaction or promotability in some way, shape, or form. Moving away from the traditional mindset of engagement and doing an actual ENPS is a wonderful way to do it. And there's two reasons why. One, you can measure employee net promotability on a real-time basis, just like you do with your customers. It's super simple. And there's wonderful ways that you can collect that information and push it out to the people who need to see it. But more importantly, for those of you that are leaders and are held accountable to business performance, you can actually correlate the employee net promoter score to net promoter scores and to profitability and revenue generation in your organization. And so when you start to build that connectivity, you can actually, as a CHRO, walk into an executive meeting or a board meeting for that matter, and show them how, as your employees become bigger promoters of the organization, that's actually driving down your turnover. It's driving up your customer satisfaction. It's driving up your revenue or profitability metrics. And it allows you to have a very different conversation. It also can be very closely tied to your revenue per employee. So again, as we think about the transformation of work, it's not just about the experience for the employees. It's about thinking about how we as CHROs or VPs of HR or whomever are changing the game in what we're doing in terms of programs, how we're building employee experiences, and how we're measuring and showing our value to the rest of the organization. We also focus very heavily on inclusion. So again, I've gotten to the point where I don't like to talk about diversity very much because, quite frankly, if you're still having to have the conversation around is your organization diverse or not, you're behind the eight ball. The focus now needs to be about inclusivity. And that, again, is an opportunity for us to really understand that the more you have inclusivity within your organization, the better you outperform your competitors in the market. So as we think about what the future of work looks like and we transform that, I challenge each of you on the call to really throw out the old models around diversity. Stop creating employee resource groups, stop creating all of these different segments, and start building a broader approach to how you make every single person, regardless of sexual orientation, gender identification, race, ethnicity, any of those things, feel 100% confident to be the most authentic and genuine version of themselves at work every single day. And then look at what people are saying about you on the internet. Again, when I think about when I first jumped into being a CHRO, I never looked at Glassdoor. I was never held accountable to that type of thing. In a new world of work, you are going to have to worry about what people are saying about you on Twitter, on LinkedIn, on Facebook, on Instagram, on TikTok, since that seems to be the new thing right now, but specifically on Glassdoor. People are using Glassdoor as a metric to make a decision if they want to come to work for your organization. Your prospects are looking at Glassdoor to see how your people feel about your organization before they decide if they want to buy with you. And so again, my message here is, don't think outside the box. Get rid of the damn box and think vastly different about what work is going to look like in the future. Think about it now, because let's be honest, the future of work is now the now of work. Everything that we were talking about that was going to happen in 6 to 12 months or even 2 years from now is happening now. This is our opportunity to think radically different about how we create those experiences, the type of culture we want, the types of programs we want to deliver, and how we're going to leverage technology to be an enabler, not a disruptor in our organization. And this is the reason why. If you think about the business value of the employee experience, there's just insurmountable amounts of data out there. But those that have been identified on Glassdoor's best places to work have over 11% return on, or excuse me, 11 times return on investment than their competitors. The organizations that are listed on Fast Company's most innovative companies list actually outperform their competitors over 28 times. So again, you don't seek these references or these accolades simply to seek them out. But when you do the right things and you vastly pivot and sustain the types of cultures that you need to in a new world, these types of things happen and they ultimately impact the business value of EX. And let's be honest, as a CHRO, we all want to make sure that not just do we have that seat at the table, but that we have a strong voice and we are sharing things that make material impacts on not just our people and culture, but the business as a whole. So I know we're probably about out of time, but Enrique, I didn't know if there was any questions that might have came in that I can address real quick before we jump off.
I don't see any questions right now, but just because of timing, I want to ask you a couple of questions and then, we'll wrap it up. The first question that I want to ask you is, what do you think will be different the day that we come back to, the new normalcy, whatever it looks like, after coronavirus? What do you think will be perhaps dramatically different when it comes to work?
Oh my gosh, the sad thing is, I think there's so many answers to that. One of them, you and I have talked about this in the past. I am a person who has worked from home a vast amount of my career. I just jump on airplanes and fly wherever I'm sent. For a lot of people, this has been a really significant change. And so to kind of go back to going to an environment every day, being in the office, I think you're going to see for a period of time a significant lack of energy and commitment and collaboration in our physical office spaces, because people are going to be nervous about going back into work. Some of them are going to have fallen in love with working from home and now want that as their current model. And organizations are going to have to think really carefully about how to navigate that. Is it just a, hey, sorry, you don't get to work from home anymore, get back to the office? Or is there going to be a transition to bring them back? Or is there going to be an entirely new model where organizations that were 100% in the office maybe now are 50-50 or maybe even larger because they saw that their business performance continued even when their people weren't coming into a location? I think that's going to be huge.
But perhaps the ultimate thing of what you're saying, which is really important, is that we're going to have to change, that we won't be able to see the future of work, which is going to be in a few months from now after coronavirus. We won't be able to see the same way we saw work before coronavirus. So we're going to have to be able to change and say, you know what? I mean, I was entrenched in this thinking process before coronavirus. I thought it was working, but obviously we proved something else during coronavirus, and we can continue doing it, right? I mean, working from home, 50-50, whatever it is, like providing all these opportunities because we proved that they can work, and we can do it well. Maybe one last question for you is, in the few seconds that we have available, anything for people to embrace the idea that work is changing so fast over the past few weeks? Anything for them to say, this is the new reality, I gotta be okay with it, because I can't just be in the middle of it because I'm going to get rolled over by all that's going on. So any recommendation for people just to embrace this very uncertain and chaotic nature of all that's going on right now?
Yeah, I mean, so just for me personally, like I have found, well, I've found a lot more peace in my life. Like I thought I had to be going really, really fast and be running at a lightning speed in order to be successful. And I've given myself a significant amount of grace over the past few weeks to say, look, I am not perfect. I don't know how to navigate this in a perfect world. But I've really been focused on pause, everybody stop, be vulnerable at this point in time, because actually letting people see that you don't have it all together and it's hard for you is significant. But continue this going forward as you're building a strategy for the future. To your point, don't allow the strategy to be, well, we're going back to the way it was. No, you're not even if you want to, you're not going to. Stop and really think about, what does that new future look like? For me, I know I'm going to prioritize things in my personal life equally with some of the things in my work life that I've never done before. And I'm going to have that same behavior towards the people that I work with and around, which I've never done before. I like I said, I run fast. I expect everybody to run with me. We all need to stop and give ourselves some grace and think about what the future looks like. But it's okay to be